Why did the ancient Mayans, the early Greeks, and the first Japanese empires all build massive stone altars facing deep, pitch-black holes? These distant cultures never met, they never traded a single item, and they were separated by thousands of miles of oceans and mountains. Yet, despite zero contact, they all described the exact same terrifying underworld hidden beneath the earth, filled with screaming spirits and demons. How could completely disconnected civilizations share the exact same horrific nightmare about what lurked in the silent depths of our planet? They weren't exchanging supernatural folk tales across continents, because this terrifying global phenomenon was actually engineered by the ancient survival mechanisms of our biology. Let's venture into Xibalba, the legendary Mayan underworld. To enter this sacred space, you had to crawl into claustrophobic, pitch-black limestone caves. Records claim these lightless depths were guarded by terrifying entities that continually tormented any human brave enough to descend into the crushing silence. Now, travel across the globe to the ancient Greek Necromanteon, an eerie subterranean temple dedicated solely to communicating with the dead. Pilgrims would isolate themselves in these absolute dark, subterranean granite vaults for days, hoping to receive visual messages from beyond the grave. In early Japanese mythology, the entrance to Yomi, their realm of shadows, was also described as a dark, inescapable cavern hiding rotting horrors. Notice the inescapable pattern here. Every single culture tied their ultimate nightmare realm to enclosed, silent, and visually impenetrable geographical voids. When these ancient explorers documented hearing tortured screams and seeing demonic figures crawling from the shadows, they were not inventing fairy tales. They genuinely experienced those vivid, blood-curdling terrors. Their hearts raced, their palms sweated, and they felt a very real presence stalking them. But the origin of this unimaginable terror was never actually hiding beneath the Earth's crust or waiting inside those geological faults. The monster in the void was entirely generated from within. It was a spectacular and terrifying masterpiece, painted by their own isolated minds. You see, our human sensory system evolved to process an endless stream of sunlight, wind, temperature changes, and environmental noise every single second. When you descend deep underground, that massive flood of external data is violently shut off, plunging your nervous system into total starvation. In these ancient ritual sites, the complete absence of light and sound created a perfect, unbroken vacuum for the human visual cortex. Nature despises a vacuum, and so does your biology. When the mind receives zero input from the outside world, it panics uncontrollably. To compensate for the deafening silence and blinding darkness, the nervous system aggressively manufactures its own data to fill the terrifying void. The screaming spirits and demonic faces they swore they saw were simply chaotic neurological projections firing off inside a biologically starved processor. But extreme sensory deprivation is only the first half of this terrifying equation. The environment itself was actively poisoning their physical bodies. The ancient world completely misunderstood the bizarre mechanics of their own biology, transforming a neurological defense response into an eternal mythological hell. If you want to understand the wild ways your own nervous system manipulates your daily reality and fabricates what you think is real, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We are decoding the strangest phenomenons of the human mind, one fascinating mystery at a time. To truly grasp the severity of this sensory starvation, we must look at a fascinating phenomenon known today as Charles Bonnet syndrome. When modern patients lose their eyesight, their brain's visual center doesn't just quietly power down and accept the permanent, sweeping darkness. Instead, desperate for stimulation, the mind begins projecting hyper-realistic, completely fabricated images directly into the person's conscious awareness without any warning. They report seeing elaborate phantom buildings, bizarre floating patterns, and even silent, ghostly figures wandering casually through their own homes. Now, transport that exact same neurological desperation back 3,000 years into a completely pitch-black, silent underground temple meant for ancient rituals. The ancient explorers weren't crazy. Their visual cortex was simply running a hyperactive diagnostic check, casting terrifying phantoms onto the empty cave walls. Every time a priest claimed they saw a demonic entity, they were actually witnessing their own neural circuits frantically trying to process absolute nothingness. This biological overcompensation completely rewrote human mythology, turning a simple neurological quirk into a globally accepted map of the damned. But the hallucinatory visions were only one piece of the puzzle, because the Earth itself was silently slipping a potent chemical into their bloodstreams. Deep geological faults and enclosed subterranean temples are notorious for trapping invisible, dense emissions, particularly lethally high concentrations of carbon dioxide. When human lungs inhale this specific invisible gas mixture, it triggers a catastrophic, uncontrollable physiological reaction deep inside the brain's temporal lobe. Your amygdala, the primal fear center of your nervous system, interprets this rising carbon dioxide as an immediate, life-threatening suffocation event. It instantly floods your body with adrenaline, engineering an overwhelming, inescapable physical sensation of impending doom and absolute dread. You aren't just mildly scared. Your biology is violently screaming that you are about to die, accompanied by a pounding heart and cold sweats. Combine this severe chemical panic attack with the aggressive visual hallucinations caused by total sensory deprivation, and the resulting experience is absolutely catastrophic. The ancients interpreted this very real physiological breakdown as a spiritual attack, completely unaware they were merely suffocating in a toxic geological pocket. You might wonder why our highly evolved nervous system would deliberately sabotage us with such terrifying false alarms in the dark. It all comes down to an ancient survival mechanism. From a purely evolutionary standpoint, a false positive is infinitely better than a false negative. Projecting a terrifying phantom in the shadows forces you to run away, keeping you perfectly safe from a predator that might actually be hiding there. Your biology would much rather you be absolutely terrified and alive than comfortably relaxed and immediately eaten by a lurking threat. This revelation completely redefines our understanding of history. The terrifying gates of the underworld were never geographical locations hiding beneath the soil. They were ancient psychological mirrors, perfectly reflecting the fragile, easily manipulated hardware of the human sensory system under extreme environmental stress. The legendary demons, the whispering spirits, and the suffocating dread were highly creative survival alerts engineered entirely by our own remarkable biology. So, the next time you find yourself alone in the pitch dark and your mind begins to conjure unsettling shadows moving in the corners, don't panic. Just smile and politely thank your remarkably creative nervous system for working overtime to keep you safe and alive.